We're going to live in a world where each of us is amplified by our own digital twin. And by the way, everybody else is too. So the digital twin will talk to, Proxy Cameron will talk to Proxy Andrew, and we can pre-flight conversations like this.
You only think in terms of tasks, then you will be automated away at some point. At some part, one of these stages, that's going to happen.
It's like a kitchen knife. That can be the greatest tool, or it could be something you use to do terrible things. It's like a flame, right? You can use it to keep yourself warm, or you can do terrible things with it. I think you and me and everyone on this, our job is to steer this powerful thing in a way that serves humanity in a very beautiful, responsible, morally grounded way.
I think it's terribly important to insist on individual values.
Learning Culture Podcast.
Initiative, creation, all these things which we value. It's now possible to make organizations on a larger scale than was ever possible before.
Learning Culture Podcast.
Teach people to analyze the kind of things that are said to them.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Learning Culture Podcast. This is a show about building cultures of learning inside companies. And joining me today for a special live episode is Cameron Hedrick. So Cameron was the former chief learning officer at Citibank and is now the founder of his own company, Yield XYZ. In this conversation, which we hosted live on LinkedIn, Cameron joins me to explore how AI is reshaping leadership, talent, and learning. Cameron shares why traditional high potential systems are breaking down, the human qualities that'll matter most in the machine era, and his prompt to Polymath framework, which maps AI integration from prompts to proxies and beyond. We get into a range of very interesting topics, from self-mastery to narrating, learning, and motion, and why managers must evolve into orchestrators of humans, agents, and outcomes. You can also expect practical ideas. We talk about peer observation circles, how real work is the lab, and building digital twins. Alongside, I think, a grounded optimism that Cameron brings. He views AI as a powerful tool that we must steer with judgment and purpose. If you're leading teams, designing learning, or simply navigating what's next, this conversation is going to help you build capability that endures. With that, please sit back, relax, and enjoy my episode with Cameron Hedrick. Cameron Hedrick, welcome to the Learning Culture Podcast. This is a live edition of it, so really excited to have you here, and welcome.
I'm really glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Yeah. So we're going to dive into your experience and background. We're going to talk a bit about what you're doing now. On that note, could you just start with a little introduction for folks who don't know, maybe that they know that you were at Citibank before, but they don't know what you're doing now. Just give us a little introduction on what you're focused on now.
Well, I'll do exactly that. I do like to, we'll just start with a little gratefulness. I'm grateful to be here. If you're here, I can infer a lot of positive things about you, and I just appreciate your curiosity that you're leaning into this. It's a privilege to be a part of this community. My name is Cameron Hedrick. I was at Citibank. Citigroup is this huge bank, a couple 100,000 people, 100 countries, multiple product lines in every function you can imagine. And over my 20-ish years there, I was the HR head for the U.S. consumer business for a while, for the global commercial business for a while. And the last several years I was there, I was the chief learning officer and head of culture for the firm. I retired, I'm semi-retired. I retired from Citi in April. And then I had garden leave, and now I'm out doing what I'm doing now, which we'll talk about I think over the course of this podcast. So thank you for having me here.
Yeah. All right. So let's dive into that. And where I want to start things off is within that experience. And you, and I'm gonna post these links in the chat as we go along. By the way, Cameron writes prolifically on his Substack. Your most recent post is one that I've really been digesting. And in that, so you draw on, you spent 22 years at Citi, right? 7 years as a chief learning officer. building talent systems, right? And in that article, you talk a lot about the systems that helped you identify and develop high potential leaders. And you also talk about how those systems are kind of breaking down, right? So I'm curious, what made you realize that they were breaking down? What was the key inflection point for you?
So, for those of you that are not directly involved in this whole talent prediction, succession planning thing, I'm guessing most of your audience probably is. You know, the game is to do your best to predict potential, predict who has the highest level of probability to be successful in the next more complex role. That's the short version. I'm about to critique the heck out of it, but I will have to say, I was saying this to Andrew earlier, a bad process, in my view, in this particular context is better than none at all, because I do think sitting down to discuss talent, even if it's an imperfect system, is better than not doing it. But to answer your question directly, there were a couple things where I started to see the breakdown, and I'll stop with two. The first is that in many companies, it becomes very bureaucratic. So the process is very onerous, and you spend a lot of time talking about people and calibrating people and even building succession plans. But then the after is not very well tended. Not everywhere, but and so the follow through. What do we do with these very specific people? And that's sort of problem number one. The second problem is this has always been the case, but this is about to be even more so, is that the question you really have to ask yourself is, high potential for what? What is the next context in which they will be operating in? And if you use today's context as a proxy for prediction of a future context, you just got to be careful with that. So what I put forth in the paper is that we've got to get better at mastery of relevant skills and attributes in the context in which they will operate. And we can unpack that if you want, but I've seen talent systems become calcified and not aim for mastery, very unclear about what they're looking for, and don't think about the future. And that's where the breakdowns happen.
Yeah, and I think a lot of folks listening can resonate with that, because most companies operate on this like quarterly talent review cycle, and you do your 9 boxes, and then so for then the premise is that for the next quarter at least, maybe longer, this 10% of people are your high potentials, and it's this very static thing. And I think what really struck me about your recent post as well is you talk about this again, this framing of like contextual mastery, and it reminds me a lot of, I guess it's like a philosophical and spiritual idea that everything is always in a state of becoming. So like a bud is of a flower is like this beautiful thing in and of itself, but it exists in potential as a flower, and then it becomes a flower, and it's a new thing, and in that context, it's beautiful. But it's existing in a potential to become a fruit, and then it sort of becomes this fruit, and then seeds, and so it's always in this state of becoming, and that cycle repeats and repeats, and it's each context is different and beautiful in its own right. So I'm curious if that resonates to what you're saying here, and you're saying like there is no static picture of high potential; it is always a state of becoming.
Yes. If you read my stuff, you're going to see the word context and flow and motion a million times. So exactly what you said. And it's a little bit of a paradox, because exactly, you said it so beautifully. I wish I could have remembered all the words, but you are constantly emerging. You're constantly in flow. And what's also true is that we only have this second right now. And then right now, and then right now. So it's this balance of, yes, preparing, thinking about the future that could come, but never forgetting that this very second, right this very minute, is really the only thing that's real. So it's balancing those two things. But there is, particularly as you progress in leadership, we have an obligation to think out over the horizon in time and in big capital S systems, all the different variables that will manifest themselves, to say, hey, are we at least arcing ourselves and our capabilities and our attributes in a direction that will survive that upcoming condition? And that's a lot of my work. And when you inject machine and intelligent systems into that future, a lot of interesting things start to happen.
Yeah. So before we get too bogged down in it, I'm wondering if you can add some practical grounding to this. Like, what is that? If people are sitting there going, like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, and yes, I see this in my own career as well. What does that look like in practice when like you were managing hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people in an organization?
Well, practically speaking, there's what we can do today, and then there's what's on the horizon. Intelligent systems going to help us see things that we can't see today. But in today's practice, I've said some of it, but here's the very practical steps. Number one, calibrate what the future state is, or the very specific skills and attributes needed for the next role. It sounds boring, but you'd be surprised. Just coming around the table with your peers to agree on that, or your directs on that, is huge. Number one. Number two, decide which of those attributes and skills need to be mastered. And this word is not used enough, mastery. And what I mean by that is it's really not enough to read a book or take a diagnostic test for some of these things. You need to see those capabilities manifesting in flow in as much as you can. So what are the things that we'll see when they will become, hit that threshold condition? Tactically, these are old yarns, but they work. Put them in stretch assignments. Put them in uncomfortable situations as much as you can. Make sure they have other humans around them that see and understand where they're trying to go, and that will be honest with them in love, to try to help them see the things that they cannot see. Those are some of the way I put it, Andrew, to people when they're trying to develop their own career. I do this analogy, this beach analogy, where, when you're on the sand and you walk out to the water and you keep going and you keep going, there's a point in time in the ocean where your toes are sticking down into the water, and then they'll come up with the wave, and then you can ground yourself again. You'll come up with the wave and you come down yourself. That's where I want people to be. I don't want them to be on the beach calcifying and getting old and obsolescing, and I don't want them to be way out in the water where they're just getting pounded and their life's in danger. But try to find that space, metaphorically, obviously, for your career.
Yeah, I like that analogy. So I'm going to come back and pull together some of those threads as well, because that was really helpful. So there's a Jay in the chat here talks about VUCA, and so he's got a military background and this idea of VUCA. And so let's bring in now the concept of AI. It's obviously very influential in your thinking and everybody's thinking, really. And this idea of uncertainty, right? And what you talk about in one of your pieces is one of AI's core limitations. And so through this, I want to bring in the role of the human, of talent. One of AI's limitations is this idea of, you call it inference in small data. It just needs huge data sets to be able to operate, right? Whereas humans, like Jay is saying, in VUCA environments, can take these, make these huge leaps with very little information, right? And so I think what you're talking about there is imagination and creativity and these kind of capabilities that an AI cannot replicate, right? And so as you think about that, how should leaders think about cultivating those capabilities intentionally? Because this is something we can develop, or is this something you're selecting for?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let's talk about what the characteristics are. It's probably 24. They've been batted around for a while, but generally speaking, the characteristics that now there's some mathematical proofs of this that will be more durable in effectiveness in the machine era are uniquely human characteristics. So we'll get to the selection develop thing in a second, but you really should be thinking about, there's a paper that we'll reference it. I might as well get it done here. There's paper MIT put out in November of last year, and they use an acronym EPOCH, EPOCH. Now, that it is not a talent prediction framework. I need to say that. What it is a study on the human qualities and attributes that work best with machines. So they are two different things, but they're in the same zip code. And they stand for, we'll get into this later in the podcast, but, empathy and EQ, broadly speaking, presence, which is also collaboration. O is opinion, and opinion is also in judgment and discernment. C is creativity. And H is hope, which threw me at first, but hope is a proxy for hope as a proxy for, vision and leadership. So I would start to arc my characteristics generally in that way, because I'll be working more with humans. As far as build or buy, to your excellent point, I'm getting in trouble here. There are, I would probably first look for those qualities that are already imbued in people. I'm not saying it can't be developed, but developing some of those is really, it's difficult. And in Western culture in particular, a lot of them depend on self-mastery, like internal knowing and internal, being very solid. We can talk about this if you want. And that's not something you can just read a book about. That's something you have to live. So those are a couple thoughts relative to your question. Oh, but you asked about inference. I missed the point here, I think.
Yeah.
The data set
let's bring
thing.
that in, but
Yeah.
we're going to come back to self-knowing as well. I do have a question on that.
But inference real quick. Yeah, to your point, I talk a lot about inference. Systems, if they can passively watch you, I'll start with AI, but then I'll come back to humans. Exactly to your point. If they have 1 million data points about you, imagine if you gave the AI free rein to everything about you, every conversation, every email, every piece of writing, everything that you do, and your biometrics, and the list is long. It can start to build a composite picture of you. But to your point, Andrew, it needs a lot of data to begin to approximate you. We will get there. You can do it today if you want. We may get to that. But your point was like that machines need a ton of data, which is true. Humans have been, we're accretive by design. So as we live our lives, we are putting in data point after data point after data point. So to your point, one new input comes in and we can attach that new observation to a scaffolding that already exists and make quicker decisions. We are uniquely good at that. And that's why some of the skills that we really need to focus on, which is like judgment and discernment and systems thinking, is such a huge skill in the future.
Yeah. I want to. You said earlier as well that these skills are difficult to develop, and as someone, that's what I dedicate my career to. I 100% agree with you. I also agree and want to emphasize that it is definitely developable. You can definitely develop these, and it just takes. I think what people don't realize is it's not a solo journey. It's a group journey. It's collective, and I think building empathy and presence and creativity, all these things that we talked about, is something that you do with and through others. That's been my experience. That's the accelerant, and that's why I'm a huge proponent of cohort-based approaches to learning. So we can come back to that, but I think that's a really, it's a salient point that you mentioned, because I kind of agree. I think you selecting for it helps you get ahead of the game a little bit, and sort of also infuse your organization with some of that talent already, right? Which can help level up. If you agree with me that collective learning is the way to go, by bringing in outside perspectives, you can also really elevate that.
To your point, yes, it can be developed. And if anybody got the sense that I was saying you can only buy this, that's not, Lord forbid you can't develop it. All of it. The thought of me being the same person I was at 20 is an absolute nightmare. So I personally need to develop that. Here's what I find to be the challenge, though. I call it self-disruption. I may come at this from a different angle. This kind of development that we're talking about, EQ, generally speaking, judgment, discernment, perspective, paradox. When you have a life crisis, I don't want to get sad here, but it kind of opens the door. There are a handful of them: death of a loved one, divorce, disease, bankruptcy. Some of these things, they shake you out of your stasis and make you in a ready state for something new internally. What I find with people is if they're in a situation where there isn't, and I don't want adversity for anybody. This is the whole thing. I mean, I don't want that for anyone. I just see that that's an unlock. So if you can get to that space without the catastrophe, create self-disruption without a bad thing happening, I think that's the special sauce to get things going.
I agree. And at the risk of turning this whole thing into a talk on spiritual lines, which I think you and I could probably have for days, there is a case to be made for suffering and how it you learn through it, but you also appreciate. It's the only way to appreciate the contrast of non-suffering. So, but anyway, let's
Yeah.
let's get back
Yeah.
to, I think,
Sorry.
self-knowing. Let's talk about that a little bit,
Yeah.
because you mentioned it earlier. What do you mean by that? I know you talk a lot about this with yield XYZ.
Yeah. So just a quick on yield XYZ. I start my whole thesis with what I call the human base code, and I call that yield XYZ. And X stands for self-knowing, Y is team knowing, and Z is organizational knowing. So think about it like concentric circles. They're interdependent. I suggest if you don't know yourself, then everything else out of those rings doesn't work very well. And back to Andrew's point, that it is a collective exercise, right? Life is. So self-knowing, though, is the beginning. I'll give you some specific examples where if a person is, and I've been all of these things, this is not judgment. This is coming from just tons of bad coding in my own life. If you have a real problem with insecurity, for example, like you're constantly questioning yourself, it's important that you can see it and understand it and sort of almost dissociate from it and explore it from a different perspective. Self-knowing would be just, again, being willing to look inside, to consider things that might appear to be contradictions as both having validity, and just being secure enough to enter into that. The biggest thing in my life that I have seen in myself and in others that's a big sign is a receptivity to critique. Like when somebody critiques your work, do you just hit that personally, and is it just really mess you up, or can you kind of move away from it, create a little distance and go, I know myself, and it's not about me. This is about the product and the work. That's another manifestation of self-knowing. So there are several of them that I write about, but I just wanted people to understand what I mean when I say self-mastery.
Yeah, and so that receptivity to critique is one thing. What else do you? What I'm trying to get at is how you assess whether someone has developed that. How do you know someone has developed the capability of self-knowing?
Well, the answer is not going to be very satisfying. Like, it when you see it. I'll tell you what I listen for, though. Like, I ask questions like, well, how did you get to that decision? Or how did you feel about this? And if there's a phase in their reflection where they look inwards and they go, well, I'll give you a specific example. I'm prone to confirmation bias. And so I'm trying to kind of solve for that when I evaluate this process. Like that tells me, oh, they understand the concept of bias and they're naming specific biases that they're aware of. That's one thing that they might do. Another thing that I see that I love is when people say, irrespective of how high up they are in the organization, where they'll go, I just don't know. I don't know. And therefore, I need to bring in an expert and defer to them, even though they are, not in the C-suite or whatever the hierarchical thing is of the day. Those are indications to me that people know themselves, know their limits, and want to have a collective experience, back to your point, to create the best outcome possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I like this term intellectual humility for that. That sort of like recognition of that. Yeah. Another one I'll say, and you're really good at this, I've noticed, is inclusive. You're inclusive. Like you're always like bringing back in things that I've said, and like it feels like in conversation with you, it's a dialogue. It's not a monologue. And I feel like that's another thing to look for in people. Okay. Let's shift to the more sort of let's zoom out a little bit and look at the adoption of AI and how this is impacting the human capabilities here. So in some of your most recent essays, you've got this framework of prompt to polymath, and it's a 4-stage framework that you talk about. And I'm gonna actually, as I've finished the question, I'm gonna start popping links in the chat for folks to check it out. Let's so it's a framework that maps AI integration, and it's 4 stages. And so we're very clearly in stage 1 now, which is this idea of prompt level augmentation. So we're adding to our ability through prompting. But you also argue, and you could speak a little bit to that as well in answering this question, but you argue that stage 2 is emerging. And I think that that's an interesting thought experiment for people. And stage 2 is about proxies and agents that learn our preferences and start to act on our behalf, right? And so it's very interesting, and everyone's talking about agents and that now. What as we think of that shift from stage 1 to stage 2, what should leaders be doing right now to prepare?
Yeah, let's talk through that. I'm starting to write down Andrew's questions because I've been drifting all over the place. I apologize, audience. I'll
No.
try to stay on topic here. Goodness, it's hard. I'm excited about this stuff. I'll do the whole prompt to Polymath pitch in less than 30 seconds. So the 4 stages are, this is my thesis on how things are going to go with AI, moving from the edges of our work to the middle. Stage 1 is prompt level augmentation, which is where we are now. Just think about interacting with your LLM, doing basic stuff. It's human driven, and the thing serves you only if you ask it to. Stage 2 is proxies and agents. This is a pretty weird concept for some people, but soon, I mean, this exists now. I have it here and I've seen it in labs. There'll be artificial intelligent representations of each of us. And we can talk about that for hours. So that's well, I use the word proxy. Digital twin is starting to become the same thing. And an agent it's like a digital worker. It's not you, but it's assigned a very specific task and coded to do a specific thing. Those are out there now. So stage 2 is proxies and agents. We'll spend most of our time there, but just to round this, 3, I call connection and coherence. And the reason I say that is that that's when agents and proxies and real humans start to connect and create coherence. There's systems like literally tied together with Ethernet cables and knowing and data sets. That's a whole nother game. And then finally, autonomous polymaths, which is, it's not super intelligence, but it's almost fully independent cross-domain expert that has a lot of agency. We're not going to talk about those last 2 because we'll get down a rabbit hole. You're asking specifically about stage 2, proxies and agents, and what we can do today. So if you imagine a world where there's some representation of you, a proxy, even if it's very simple, and agents, the whole definition of management and leadership and governance and delegation is going to change. We're going to live in a world where each of us is amplified by our own digital twin. And by the way, everybody else is too. So the digital twin will talk to, Proxy Cameron will talk to Proxy Andrew, and we can pre-flight conversations like this. You'll be working with agents. So you need to think in terms of outcomes. I talk about structuring orgs for the outcomes you want and harnessing the proxies, agents, and humans towards a specific outcome as opposed to a task list. Another thing, just simply put in the proxies and agents world is you better talk about security, personal security and self-mastery. You better grab hold of that real quick because machines are going to just already are. They just eat our lunch in terms of capability in very specific areas. Thank God they're terrible at other things that we happen to be good at. So those are some, just know it's coming. When you think about potential prediction, think about, well, how would this person operate in that future state, and get yourself ready.
Yeah. Okay. So lots to unpack here. Let's talk a little bit about what AI is good at when versus humans. And I think you mentioned tasks and outcomes, and I think this is I think I almost go so far as to say, if you only think in terms of tasks, then you will be automated away at some point. At some part, one of these stages, that's going to happen. But if you think in terms of outcomes, and this is trainable, like you can learn to think in terms of outcomes, then you will always be at a sort of level above an AI, where your job becomes an allocation of resources. You are allocating out the tasks to get the work done, but you own the outcome. And so if you agree with me on that premise, I wonder if you have thoughts on what human skills become really important when you're owning outcomes instead of tasks.
Well, I think the first point you made is the key point in my view. It's accountability does not go away. The human is still accountable. It's really just like delegation today. I've had hundreds of people work for me, and I would delegate tasks to the human, but ultimately I was on the hook for the quality of the outcome I couldn't, you can't absolve yourself of anything, whether it's delegating to a human or delegating to an AI. It's same thing. And anybody who's like constantly scapegoating and making excuses for poor execution, if they're human, they're going to probably be the same kind of people that do it with AI. So you own the outcome. The way I think about it, and actually what I look for in people in potential prediction is this person a good orchestrator of resources? Right? So can they orchestrate a bevy of proxies, agents, and humans? Can they sum all of it up and kind of see the patterns and make judgments that are grounded in morality and competitive advantage where it makes sense? It's this higher order systems thinking that's underpinned by a moral compass. And, that's more what I say, like human to get in there. So, yeah, if you're not good at those types of things now, then the future is going to be tough. And the opposite is also true.
Yeah, exactly. And it sort of starts to become, I think, evident that the skill set of being a manager now, today as we know it, so even and before AI, where your job is to see the bigger picture, to manage and allocate resources, to delegate and give feedback and all that skill set is essentially the skill set everyone is going to have. It becomes like the new baseline skill set.
100%. The whole idea of individual contributor is just dying.
Yeah. I want to make the case that we should stop calling it individual contributor and instead call it impact contributor. Call that role impact contributor, right? Because it's still, in fact, it's probably going to become even more possible to never have to manage people, right? And some people don't want to, right? And so I think it's a lot more viable for someone to become, stay in IC as we call it now, but like I'm saying, become an impact contributor to manage AI and agents and all these proxies and maybe have a twin helping you. But to get so much work done without having to manage another person. You're always going to have to collaborate, right? And I think we sort of skirted around. No, we have talked about this, that it's collective, and we are going to have to learn and continue to learn how to work together. But it's that manager skill set. It's becoming so important, and I agree with you. I think individual contributor, as we know it now, is really the role that's going to go away.
I would say further to your point, Andrew, which is just awesome. I love your work. If you are not, I'll say this. Look, I don't know. People on this phone, probably this isn't going to resonate with you. You wouldn't be here. But if you haven't had your existential crisis with Claude or OpenAI, whatever your favorite LLM is, that you have not gotten where you need to go. You need to spend at least 100 hours, at least. I spend that in a week, but it has got to be everywhere that you are. And once you kind of get that, what you'll find is, I keep looking over here. I wish you could see. I have like a bunch of screens, and I have Claude, Grok, OpenAI's, ChatGPT. And what you'll learn over time, if you're into this, they all have very different personalities. I know this sounds weird, and I don't mean to. What's the word when you make something human? Anthropomorphize. I'm going to get in trouble for that, but they do. They have quirks already, and like sometimes I go, you know what, Claude is much better at this. So I'm going to go to Claude instead of this. It's not a human, and let's never mistake it for. And you really don't. But it does have a lot of human qualities because just ground up humans, everything ever, and like cut into a paste, and so it feels human, but it's not. But they do have really extensive variability. I spend all day with these things, and then when I get on the phone with Andrew, like we did last week, I'm like, oh, it is very different to talk to a human. That's good.
Yeah, I know the feeling, and you kind of miss it. And I feel like that's never going to go away, which is awesome. That's an example of allocating resources, knowing which AI to use for which purpose. I mean, that's another perfect example of that.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I've created. I'm going to put this out next week so everybody can do it for themselves. But I've created such a comprehensive proxy of myself that I'll say, write it, talk to me, answer these, and it's wonderful because when it gives me a return and I go, that's not me. Why did you think that was me? I would never do that. Then it will reveal, like, well, here's the assumption set that I built that answer on. So then I can go claw away at the code and go, oh my God, I created my own bug of me.
Yeah.
It's wild.
This is taking a new meaning to self-knowledge. So you're like debugging an AI
Well,
version of yourself.
but I was going to get to that. That's exactly right. Because when you asked the question earlier, we were still in analogville. With AI, it can help you see things that you just cannot see. It's like it's the ultimate psychographic tool. And some of the things I've seen, I'll give you one example. You can go look at it now because it's already out in public. Wethos.ai, for example. They can x-ray your self in a way that I have not seen before, where the reflection back is like, whoa, holy heck. And it can do the same thing for your team members. So you've got this mirror and lens concept, and now self-discovery and team cohesion takes on a whole different meaning.
Yeah. This is, I mean, perspectives and perspective shifting is a huge part of the work we do and teach. And AI is this incredible advantage for anyone who sees the world like that and wants to get a different perspective on themselves, on a problem they're going through, whatever. I mean, you can get infinite perspectives from the AI. That's almost one of the most useful.
And it doesn't get tired of you. And giving AI feedback is way easier because you should see how I talk to these things. And I talk to it now. I'm like, that's terrible. Stop that. I've told you 16 times not to do it that way, and you're doing it again.
Do you use please and thank you?
I do.
Yeah, me too.
People think I'm bananas, what they could see and hear, because it feels like that. I mean, we're working together all day, and I really appreciate you. And I know it's just crazy, but that's the zone that you'll get in. So nuts. I tell it to try harder all the time. I go, that you are getting lazy. Stop that.
I love it. These are good tips, actually. Okay, so I want to go zoom in a bit, and then I want to zoom out, and that'll like close out the time here. So on the zoom in part, you outlined some things in your writing around, like, I think it's really good ideas. You said to me earlier, like, your background is more the HR side. You had 7 of your 22 years there was CLO work, and it's not your main area of expertise, but you have so many good ideas around the learning side. And I'm going to mention 3 of them. The last one is the one I want you to dig in a bit more for us on, because it's really fascinating. So some things that for everyone listening, you've got, ideas of what leaders can do today to build this capability, the stuff we've been talking about. You mentioned real work as the lab. And so I posted your Substack in here for folks. Go and look up those phrases. Real work is the lab. I completely agree with you. A lot of our stuff it takes that idea. You talk about peer observation circles, which is really cool. But the one I want to dig into, I'm just genuinely curious what you mean by this. Narrating learning in motion. What does it mean to narrate learning in motion? I think I understand the concept, but I want to hear what that looks like in practice.
Yeah, narrate learning in motion outside of an AI environment is if we were talking about a decision that we made. You might just come over the top at a team meeting. Let's say we were just at a team, and you'd say, "I've decided to do X, blah blah blah." I would go, "Well, help me unpack that decision. Like, why did you do that? And what were the assumption sets? And how did you come to that conclusion?" And I want, what I'm trying to do is get inside someone's head to see what are the systems that they may not even be able to articulate what they're doing because it's all happening subconsciously. I'm trying to bring that up. And I like to do it in a group environment because other people can see. So a lot of things happen when you do this in a group. First of all, it elevates and it takes what's opaque in decision making and it puts it above the waterline. Number 1. Number 2, it normalizes errors in thinking and experimentation and failure because it just creates a different norm in the environment itself. And it also, back to your excellent point about collective everything, it gives other people a chance to go, oh, well, in that particular flow of learning that you just articulated, where did that come from? Or did you think about this? And it's really just getting that up above the surface. AI will be able to help us see that through passive inference, but I don't think that's what we're talking about right now.
No, this is exactly what I thought it was, and it reminds me. I've been trying to pull up the link, and I will put it in the chat for folks. Chris Argyris, I think, used to talk about this left-hand column, right-hand column idea, where you you write in the one column what happened, and then you write in the second column what people felt and thought about it, and those things are often different.
Oh, that's
right?
good.
Right, and so just having that explicit and art on the really, really cool. I think I found an article here. I'll drop that in the chat in a sec. But
I have to check that out.
Yeah,
that's so good. That's so much better said than the way I did it. It's but that practice is good, really. Even in your own self, like, why do I think this?
Yeah, it reveals assumptions, right? Like, I mean, and that is an incredible power to be able to have. Okay, I found a link. I haven't read this whole article, so I don't know but it does seem to explain it fairly well. So I'll drop that in there. But let's
send it long.
Yeah, I'll send it to you afterwards. So let's zoom out again now, and this is to start to bring us home. And by the way, thanks for the chats. This chat's going off here. I know you can't see it, Cameron, but we've got some really great comments from folks, and I hope I hope you're all kind of seeing and maybe following up with each other after this as well. Okay, so in one of your pieces you write, I'm just going to read this word for word because I love this line. Machines may calculate more quickly, but they do not search for meaning or rise stronger from failure. That act of renewal is what makes us human. Now, first of all, that's just beautiful. It really captures this essence of what we're talking about here, of how AI can actually make us more human. But it also raises a hard question. And I know a lot of people in practice now are grappling with this, and that is, how do leaders create space for meaning and renewal in organizations that are optimizing for efficiency?
Okay, so let's take this let me just say a little bit more about that sentence, and then I'll get to your question about meaning in the context of relentless search for efficiency. Will that work?
Yeah, perfect.
One of the best pieces of advice I got from a mentor, I was like 22. Here's a short version. Here's a less elegant version of what I wrote there is hire people with scars. That's what he said. Hire people with scars. And of course, what he meant by that is, this goes back to self-awareness too, Andrew. People that come to the table, and we all do, with scars, battle scars. We got beat up somewhere, but we survived it. So a scar is a symbol of, I've been through stuff and I'm smarter and for it, in my head and my heart.
Wisdom almost.
It is. It's that. And AI, sometimes it might seem like it has it, but it's not. It doesn't have that. It doesn't bleed. And I mean that metaphorically and obviously literally, but that means a lot to me. That's why I can talk to these AIs all day, but I don't feel the same thing. If you tell me something born out of your struggles, I'm taking you, it's a whole different experience than when I hear something from AI. So that's that concept. And now let's move over. I'll try to build a bridge to your question about creating space and meaning in the relentless search for efficiency. It's going to get a little weird and existential, but this is just who I am. Part of the question might infer, I don't think this is what you mean, but let me just get this one out of my head so I can get to the heart of the matter, that I don't think that meaning and the relentless search for efficiency are necessarily at odds with each other. I don't think one negates the other. And as humans, we're imbued with meaning and purpose just by nature of the fact that we're here. Period. Much has been made about purpose statements and all that stuff, and I love that stuff. I nerd out on all of that. But you already have everything you need to have, what you have in your bank account or where you went to school and all this other kind of stuff. You already have meaning. But as a leader, now let's get to the heart of your question, and all of us have probably done this on the phone. Lord knows I have. If you are constantly cutting, it's a tough environment. I don't know any organization that doesn't do it. So the way you do it as a leader matters a lot. First, I think the leader has to say, I don't like this either. I'm not going to get mired in the negativity, but I feel it too. Create a little space for that. Create an imperative that you are going to execute well in this context, even though we don't like it. Another thing to do in this particular example is define what your ultimate objective is. Who are you serving? Keep your eyes on that. Yeah. So how you show up and create meaning in the moments during the efficiency cut process is really all you got. You can create it in yourself, and as a leader, you absolutely have to do it.
Yeah, and I just want to underscore your point about thinking about the audience and who you're serving, and is because without making it too narrow, uh, so much communication. There's this great quote that the problem with communication is the illusion that it's happened, because so many people communicate right in a way that they think,
Totally.
not that others hear. And what you're saying is, think about the audience, think about who you're serving, and yes, adapt what you're going to say, what you're doing, everything for that person. That's how you create impact.
It is true. This point on communication, I'm glad you said that, because if anyone on the phone, if you think what you say is being heard and understood, that illusion, you need to put that down straight away. When I say the color blue, Andrew has a different version of it in his head than I do, than everyone on the phone. And I'll tell you, it's tiring. Because when it matters, you really, to your point, you've got to take the time to calibrate with your audience. Like, what do we really mean? What are we actually going to do? You can't fly over that high and fast. You have to get down in it. It's not fun.
There's no shortcut. I agree. Okay, so we're starting to land the plane here. I got one or two more questions. We've been talking a lot about how things need to change. I think everyone appreciates that, recognizes that this is a technology that is completely changing the way we, not even just the way we work, but the way we think about work, right? So it's changing the fundamentals here. Are you optimistic?
Yes. You know what? Yes, I am. But let me tell you why. A lot of if any of you put any content out, you have experiences. You will have haters. And then, to quote Taylor Swift, the haters are going to hate. And that's fine. So I'm comfortable with that. But I got some weird critiques. So there's a through line that is still coming through, and it goes something like this. These polarities have emerged. Either, why are you doing this? Because AI is going to do everything for us, and life is going to be glorious, and we're going to have nothing but abundance. So, go and retire. But the more pronounced one is the other side, which is, why are you wasting your time? We're all going to get killed by this thing, ultimately. This doomer on steroids. Pragmatically, and to just so my soul doesn't die under the weight of pessimism, here's how I think about it. It's like a kitchen knife. That can be the greatest tool, or it could be something you use to do terrible things. It's like a flame, right? You can use it to keep yourself warm, or you can do terrible things with it. I think you and me and everyone on this, our job is to steer this powerful thing in a way that serves humanity in a very beautiful, responsible, morally grounded way. That is the role that I'm going to play, and that I'm asking everybody that I talk to, go for that. Don't get caught up in either of these polls, because it probably will not be either one of them.
Yeah, I'm feeling the gratitude now that you spoke about it at the beginning for you for doing this work, because I think that is such an important message for people to take, and there's agency in that message, that not, this is AI and technology change isn't something that's happening to you. It's something you have a say in, and you have agency over.
Perfect. That's so excellent. Yeah, perfectly said.
Okay, let's end it off with this last question then, Cameron. For the folks tuning in live with us now, who've been popping in the chat, and for anybody who's listening to this played back as a recording, walking away from this conversation, what is one shift you hope that they have about leadership, about talent, about building an organization in the age of AI?
First, I want you to be encouraged. Like, your innate human qualities play very well in the age of AI. Get involved, help steer the river, like we just talked about. Please do not sit on the sidelines. If you are here on this call, like I said at the beginning, I can infer you have power, you have influence, you're engaging your mind and your soul in a special way. So be encouraged, get involved, and spread the word. That's what I would want to leave people with.
That's beautiful, Cameron. That's so well said. And I feel the same way about everyone who's stayed with us through this conversation, or who's listening back to it and thinking like, what can I do differently? Like the fact that you are here now listening to this part of the conversation 50 minutes in, you're a long way along. You're a long, long way along.
Mind blowing. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, Cameron, thank you so much for spending this time with me. You've been traveling all over the place. You were in San Diego last week. You've got more travels coming up. It's so nice to be able to sit down and have an in-depth conversation and to share it with everyone. So thank you for that. And if as a last thought from you, if people want to get in touch, I've shared your Substack in there, but anything else you would point them towards if they want to learn more and get involved?
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Andrew. Yes, I'm on LinkedIn, Cameron Hedrick. I'm pretty easy to find. My Substack, to your point, is cameronxyz.substack.com. That's where all my stuff is. Some videos, some writing. My website's www.yieldxyz.com. Just go check it out. Send it around. Subscribe. If you like this stuff, let other people see it. And yeah, thanks. And check out Andrew's work. I'm subscribed to your mailing list. I looked through your course catalog. Curious Lion has a lot of good things going on, but you probably know that because you're here already.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, Cameron. I hope we find ways to collaborate again in the near future. This was a lot of fun.
Me too.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in live. It's been an absolute pleasure to do this like that. And I will see you all on the next one. Cameron, we'll talk soon.
Yes.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank you. Be well. Take care.
Hello. I hope you enjoyed that episode. It's Andrew again with a quick message. If you'd like to support the show, the best way to do that is to leave us ratings and reviews where you listened. If you're on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe buttons and feel free to leave a comment. We love hearing from our listeners and viewers. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, please take the time to give us a rating and leave a review. Once again, we love hearing from our loyal listeners. If you're listening to this on Spotify, please hit the follow button to make sure that you don't miss new episodes as they come out. See you next week for another episode of the Learning Culture Podcast. Thank you for listening.